I want to welcome everyone as you join our exciting webinar today. One thing that would help us if you could do as you're joining, for whatever reason, I have to go in and rename myself every single Zoom webinar I attend. So if you could rename yourself and put your organization after your name, that is really, really helpful to me because I recognize names and then I lose who is with which agency. So as we're waiting for people to join, if you don't know how to do it, you go up to your picture thingamajiggy and there's a ... Click on that ... and then you go to the very bottom drop down and it says rename. And so then you just put a comma, your organization name after it. I love it because then when somebody asks a question or somebody says something, I know that, oh, this is this person from this agency, and it makes it much easier for me to know who is who, because sometimes I only know faces, not names, and vice versa. So again, we're waiting for everyone to join. If you can go in and rename yourself, adding your organization after your name, that would be excellent. Oh, so many of you have done it. I'm so excited. At least half of you have done it. Again, if you don't know how to do it, go up to the ... and then select rename and add it. So do we have anyone else waiting? Lori? Okay.
Nope, let's go ahead and get started.
Well, I want to welcome everyone here today. I am not Christos Xenophontos from Rhode Island. He is has a conflict with another meeting and is running late. So he asked me to welcome you today to the quarterly joint meeting of the CPBM. We love acronyms. You're going to get acronym to death today. Of the Committee on Performance-Based Management and the TPM TSP. So TPM, Transportation Performance Management, TSP, Technical Services Program. So we do these quarterly webinars to keep you up to date on everything that's happening. So we would like to thank the CPBM leadership, the Committee on Performance-Based Leadership, which consists of Christos as our chair, Gene Wallace from Minnesota DOT is our vice chair, and then I serve as secretary. Or as Christos likes to say, I'm the one that kicks him in the butt all the time. We also have Mish from Federal Highway here, a partner with us, and I say that from the bottom of my heart. I appreciate Mshadoni Smith-Jackson and all she does to partner with us, as well as Anna and the entire AASHTO team for supporting the Committee on Performance-Based Management. We have a wonderful action-packed agenda for you today. I'm so excited. It's one of my favorite topics on safety. So we've got Kelly Hardy from AASHTO, John Nelson from Missouri DOT. Yes, the same place that I'm from. We want to let you know that the notes, the webinar, the recording, everything will be emailed out to you if you've attended today, as well as posted to the TPM portal. So you'll be getting that later this week. Continue to keep yourselves muted, whether you're joining by computer or by phone, so that we are listening to your hold music or distracted by that. We do have question and answer time. We encourage you to use the chat. Insert any questions, comments, insights, suggestions, and then we will open it up for unmuting yourself for Q&A. So let's get started. I'm so excited. First, Lori, can you show your... We're not seeing your screen. So the first slide she's going to show you is our agenda. I'm not going to go through the whole agenda. You can see it there. It's following pretty much the standard format. We always have a featured topic, and then we have our subcommittee and task force updates of all the great work that you are doing in helping us, the Committee on Performance-Based Management. So first on the agenda, if you want to go to the next slide, is our AASHTO update done by Anna McLaughlin, who is the program director for TPM. Now this TPM means Transportation Program Management. There will be a test at the end of this webinar, and anybody that gets 100% on every single acronym that we offer, I will personally buy you a drink at our conference in St. Louis. So pay attention to all of these acronyms. So Anna is responsible for trying to corral us all on the Committee on Performance-Based Management. And she also works with the Committee on Planning and the Committee on Data Management and Analytics. I guarantee you that we are her favorite committee, though. She doesn't have to confirm or deny it. I am just stating that up front. So Anna provides leadership on AASHTO's policy and technical activities related to TPM, asset management, planning, and data management. So take it away.
Thank you, Karen. I can totally be honest that you are my favorite committee. And I'm going to plan on getting a drink in St. Louis. So I just have a couple updates today before we get started. I wanted to, we're going to talk later when we do subcommittee updates about reauthorization. And I'm excited to Ryan's going to give the recap on that. We've been working hard on that. The other thing I wanted to mention, I'm not sure if everyone has heard, FHWA, we recently had our GHG performance measures that were, there was a ruling on them from the courts, and we recently heard that FHWA is appealing those rulings. So both the decision that came out of Texas and the 21 states lawsuit are being appealed by FHWA. So we just heard about those within the last couple of weeks. So I just want to give everyone a heads up on that. Fortunately, I have my colleague Mish who's up next, and maybe she'll have more information about that. And then I did just want to talk real quickly about our TSP, our Technical Services Program. Here's kind of a snapshot in front of us of our current members for FY24 and kind of where we are heading into FY25. As you know, the TSP is made up of core services, where we bring you our TPM hub, peer exchanges, and webinars that we're able to do. And then we also have the optional services that many states take advantage of. I was working with the University of Maryland and their CAT lab primarily, as well as other customizable services. If you are one of the states that opts into these optional services, you should have received a letter of commitments from me a couple months ago, back in April. If you haven't returned them yet, you can see in my column here, FY25, the letters I've received back. If you are not checked off on that column, please reach out to me. I'm trying to get those as soon as possible. We really do need them before the start of the fiscal year, July 1. So just kind of a heads up that we are trying to get those back for FY25. And for those states that don't take advantage of the optional services and just do the core services, the AASHTO General TSP solicitation will be coming out the first week of July. So a heads up for that. That usually goes directly to the CEO's office, and so the performance management TSP is bundled in with all of the AASHTO TSPs, and you kind of get a menu to check off. So something for program staff to be aware of, that is coming the first week of July. You should be seeing that. If you have any questions specifically, please shoot me an email and we can talk. That's what I had on for the TSP. And then the other one, as you can see, look at this background. Karen was my inspiration for this background. Thank you, Karen. I will put the link to our St. Louis conference in the website, in the chat. Sorry, I'll put the link to the website in the chat. Registration is up. This morning, we have up a agenda that has more information on it, not just at a glance, but has session titles that I'm laughing at your chat, Karen. So there is an agenda now posted on the website that has session titles and more information about the content for your travel requests. And we will be holding a peer exchange on the Friday, that's September 20th, performance management peer exchange. We're still ironing out the details. But there will be travel support for that as well. So I'm expecting tomorrow to get out the information on the travel support. So for TSP members, we will be able to provide support to attend this peer exchange that can be in conjunction with the conference. I am really excited about it. I'm excited about seeing people in person. It'll be a lot of fun and a lot of great content. Yes, there will be travel support for the peer exchange. Again, if you have any questions, please let me know. The slides will be shared. So if you want to start using this as your Zoom background too and be one of the gang, I totally support that. And that's all I had. So I think, do I pass it back to you, Karen, or am I sending it over to Mish?
No, I get the privilege of being Christos, so I get to do everything that he did, but better.
Perfect.
Okay, so next we have our federal highway updates. And you notice I'm going to say the word favorite a lot. And I use that selectively because if I really, really like you, then you're my favorite. And if I don't say anything, then you probably won't hear favorite. But I have to say Mish is one of my top favorite partners from Federal Highway. She's been working with Federal Highway since September 2022 as the team leader for performance and asset management. I first met Mish when she was with FTA before she rejoined Federal Highway. She has over 20 years experience in transportation civil engineering and currently manages the TPM and asset management programs, including rulemaking, the PMF, the Performance Management Forum, TAMP recertification and consistency determinations, as well as all the guidance from Federal Highway and technical assistance on the TPM and the TAMP. So I will let you provide your update, Mish.
Thanks, Karen. Sounds like I'm going to have to update my bio because I'm getting very close to 30 years experience in transportation, but I think it makes me sound young to just say 20. Anyway, thank you so much for the warm welcome. And I just wanted to go over a couple of updates. Most of you are aware that we are rolling into some of our oversight activities in both asset management and performance management. We will be starting our annual consistency determination this month, actually, and we are gearing up for our performance management reporting, which will happen later this summer. There have been a series of webinars that we are holding. We're calling them asset management case study mini-series. The next one is coming up June 26th. Hopefully you have been made aware of that. If not, I am going to be pushing a Gov delivery notice out so that you could get that information. We are also holding our regional calls where we have the Federal Highway Division, our field contacts, as well as our DOT contacts meet and discuss issues that are relevant right now. The issue that's on everybody's mind right now for asset management is the annual consistency determination. We're also holding what we call our TAMP guidance workshops. And really, it's just a one-day in-person event where we're going over different asset management concepts. It's not about the regulation guidance. It's more so guidance in how asset management is implemented. And we're having our 5th one next week in North Dakota. These workshops have been really well received in the locations we've been able to provide them, and we are considering making this a longer or extending the workshop series so that we can have more than just 5 more. On the performance management side, we are, as I mentioned, getting ready to kick off the performance management reporting. And you should be getting information starting to come to your inbox about external webinars and testing, which will be happening later this summer. And I am happy to announce that our midpoint performance period input forms will be published. Oh gosh, say that 3 times fast. Will be published on our TPM webpage by tomorrow. So please do take a look at our TPM webpage and pull down those input field forms so that you can be prepared when the PMF does open for what information we'll be collecting. In addition, we will be posting our 2022 dashboard information this month. So also keep an eye out for that information, but we will do a Gov delivery marketing outreach to let you all know that that data is available once it is public and posted on our TPM webpage. So those are the announcements that I have for today. Thank you so much for your time. I'll pass it back over to not Christos, but Karen Miller.
So I put one question in the chat because we have a lot of new staff, a lot of turnover. So what is the actual due date for the consistency review?
So the consistency, the annual consistency determination documents from the DOT are due to the division office by June 30th. This year, June 30th is a Sunday. So we are requesting submissions by June 28th, which is a Friday.
So
Thanks
June
for that question, Karen. I meant to mention that.
So June 28th for the determination, yeah. Phew. I don't use the right words. I can do acronyms all the way, but I can never use all the terminology. So then my second question is, what should state DOT should have received, which I still haven't got mine, on the PMF submitters? Because that's due at the end of this month. So would you please speak to that?
Sure. Your division office will be contacting you. So it won't be a headquarters person. You won't get an email from me or anyone on my team. Your division office should be reaching out to you directly to ask who are the individuals at the state, which roles they will play in submitting to the PMF this year, and if they need access. At that time, they should give you information about and instructions how to get access to UPACs. Now, I don't know what that acronym means, but that is like the security platform that DOT uses, and you need to be on the list in order to get access, which is why we go through this kind of kickoff step so that you all can get access and then instructions.
So I want to make sure all of you heard that very clearly. To submit your PMF by October 1st, you have to have state DOT staff that go through this process. I went through it like 10 or 12 years ago, whenever the first one was due, and I had to give blood. I had to give the social security number of my firstborn. It took me 6 months. It was a horrendous, huge process. I don't think it's like that anymore, but as soon as I get the email from our Federal Highway Division office, which I should have gotten at the beginning of June because it's due at the end of June, then I'm going to see how long it takes this new person to get UPACs or PMF access. So reach out yourself to your Federal Highway Division office to find that email and to submit the names to your Federal Highway Division office of who needs to start the process of getting access to enter that. So that's a definite action item for all of you state DOTs if you have new staff you need to add. So I took up all the questions. Does anyone else have any questions, comments for Mish?
I just want to say thank you to Lori for putting in what UPACS actually stands for.
I would have failed that one, so I wouldn't be able to buy myself a drink. Okay, thank you so much for that update, Mish, and for all the effort and work of your staff. I know a lot of them are new, so. Now we are going to turn the corner and get to the really exciting part. Okay, our feature topic this quarter is safety and performance management. Our first speaker is Kelly Hardy. Again, she is one of my favorite people at AASHTO. She is a nationally renowned safety expert. Have worked with her and known her for many, many years. She's the AASHTO program manager for safety and supports the AASHTO's traffic safety efforts as the liaison to the Committee on Safety and Technical Committee on Roadway Safety. So if any of you happened to be at the Kansas City meeting last fall, where they came up with this AASHTO Safety Initiative, you may be somewhat familiar. If not, we're going to turn it over to Kelly to bring us up to speed. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Thank you, Karen. I think possibly you're my favorite state DOT person ever now after that. Well, should we take a show of hands to see if you're all familiar with the safety initiative activities we have going on? And if you are, we'll just skip to John Nelson stuff. We'll assume there's some details in here that you haven't heard yet. And so we'll run through what we are doing is advancing. Yeah, so basically we have kind of the AASHTO Safety Action Plan. There was a resolution last year, and we have a safety summit, and then kind of enough other things going on that we just sort of started referring to it all collectively as a safety initiative. So we'll kind of go through what all is encompassed in that, but then spend a little more time on the safety action plan and some of the state DOT initiatives going on and council commitments that we've been collecting information on as part of this effort. So kind of some background, AASHTO's always had a role in safety and it's always been a priority, but there was the AASHTO presidents have emphasis areas, and over the past several years there's been a few that have had safety as an emphasis area, and that's really brought a lot more attention kind of AASHTO wide on it. So several years ago, I think it was 2020 to 21, Patrick McKenna, the Missouri DOT director, was the AASHTO president and had an emphasis area of safety, and that really helped just kind of get safety more into the discussions across AASHTO, but especially kind of at the higher levels and among the board of directors talking about different things that could be done. And the idea was kind of one of the ideas was to kind of get that institutionalized so that it stays in the conversations within AASHTO. And then we're also looking across AASHTO committees to see where we would collaborate more. So then we've kind of come to 2 or 3 years later, and Roger Millar from Washington was the AASHTO president and also had safety as an emphasis area. In between there were other emphasis areas that actually did kind of support a lot of the kind of continuing the safety and the kind of growth of safety as like a common topic of conversation. There was, equity and partnership focuses, which are all part of the safety activities as well. So last year with Roger Millar as the president, we held the AASHTO Safety Summit, and there was a lot of focus from Roger on the safe system approach. We've been kind of through the Committee on Safety, we've been developing materials to support state use of the safe system approach or concepts of it, to just show some case studies and examples. But that kind of got more into the conversations last year across AASHTO and the committees with the, just kind of the growth of interest in the safe system approach, but then also with the, AASHTO presidential emphasis area on it too. And so then we had that summit last year in October in Kansas City. And one of the, things that came out of that was a safety action plan, but basically in a resolution, but more or less kind of continuing. That was the safety summit last year was sort of like the first step in a larger sustained effort. So then we get to this year with Craig Thompson of Wisconsin, the AASHTO president, and we are focusing on like sharing best practices and examples among states and really promoting things that have worked, proven countermeasures, and also kind of using innovative countermeasures as well. And then also another safety summit. So that one, so we're doing it again this fall. So that's kind of an overview of how we got to where we are now with the safety initiative through kind of the increasing the like re-energizing the conversations and the committee collaboration and the collecting information from the states and things. It's all kind of builds from the some of that higher level focus in AASHTO we've had recently. So then the safety initiative, kind of what we're calling safety initiative, is sort of what started last year with the summit and things, which kind of all that builds on what we've been doing with the safety committee and other AASHTO committees, but kind of really the initiative package we're referring to was with the summit. The purpose of the summit was to really get a lot of those conversations across the committees and across the different stages of the project life cycle and across the DOT functional areas, get them moving. And we wanted to identify what states are doing and then identify what the gaps are, like what kinds of tools and resources are needed out there yet. So we collected tons of information on that at the summit, and we've been prioritizing things and going through and building more case studies and examples, and kind of it feeds into the committee commitments that we'll I'll show in a little bit. There was at the summit, there was a resolution that was kind of developed it based on the summit discussions, and then right after that was the AASHTO annual meeting where the resolution was approved by the board of directors, and it was basically kind of renewing the AASHTO commitment to safety and the commitment to eliminating fatalities and serious injuries, but then also talking about a commitment to promoting a culture of safety and supporting the safe system approach, or the concepts, however kind of it, whatever portions of it, all of it or portions of it could be implemented in states, and then developing the safety action plan. The resolution was directing us to do that, but we basically had done a draft of that by the end of the summit anyway. And then really looking across all the AASHTO, the whole AASHTO community, to see how we could work together and build on things that are already being done and find new places to be working. So the AASHTO, the safety action plan itself, the document itself is a little bit, it's generic, and it's kind of a high level approach of kind of the things we want to accomplish with it. And then there's an appendix that contains all of the resources we had collected at that point. So the purpose of the plan is to help us share notable practices and examples, whether they're technical or more policy oriented, or workforce development related, to promote a consistent approach to decision making, to be able to share kind of the way states are working the quantitative safety considerations into decisions where they can, and then just kind of for processes and for having consistent consideration of different factors and decision making processes. All the resources that the kind of the gaps that were identified, we kind of working through prioritizing those among the committees, and then looking for the committees to identify what actions they can take within their scope or in conjunction with other committees to keep the conversation and the activity going in the AASHTO, like the association community, and then also looking at building existing partnerships and establishing new partnerships to keep us moving forward also. The plan is kind of organized there there's kind of the approach and the general principles. That's kind of, sort of the things you might see in a lot of your strategic highway safety plans: multidisciplinary approach, all road users, well, strategic hour safety plans and safety programs across your agencies in general, but looking at safety culture as a factor in there too, and then employee safety as an element in this, which it's kind of a little separate from a lot of our discussions on traffic safety. There's also the employee health and safety topics as well, and then looking kind of from the beginning to the end of projects and across entire programs, and then across kind of all the different functional areas in the DOT. And then there's kind of outlining the goals for the safety. So the AASHTO safety work, that's really to make sure we're kind of all on the same page and understanding where it's kind of how different things get prioritized, I guess. And it's a focus on maybe the more severe crashes, the ones with fatalities and serious injuries, rather than kind of just all crashes, which brings in a lot of focus on, the property damage only. So it's really trying to focus on the, the system users and how to protect them more. And then there's a section of the action plan that's we're calling it some buckets, and I still think of it that way, but it's a strategic action work streams. Sounded a lot more formal and professional, I guess, but we kind of all the different resources that were identified in the examples and the kind of the gaps, they sort of fell into 4 buckets, and it was kind of things specific to individual projects and within maybe a section of the project lifecycle. So sort of like design activities or maintenance activities. And then there were the ones that were kind of more at the organization level. So that was working across the project lifecycle and across different functions and elevating things up so that the kind of this safety, considering safety across the board. Collaborating with partners was one, and then policy positions. Those were kind of, are they AASHTO policy positions? Do we have examples or models of state policies that we can share? Or, these examples might come from outside the state DOT world that we can bring in and share, try to build on. And then as an appendix to the safety plan, I mentioned we have the resource that we identified as a way of displaying them through the summit. We were using a website called Mural so that we could organize things a little more visually, but we put them all into an Excel spreadsheet so that we could actually sort and work with them later. So the safety action plan has links to these in the summit, the different versions of it. Sorry, links in the action plan. There are links to these resource files, the Mural tool and the Excel files, and that's a place to go, for a place that the committees can go to look for different activities to prioritize the ideas, in the different categories or where they have interest. They can see if there were needs out there that were that are a priority for their committee that they could take the lead on. So then, as because building from the safety action plan, we kind of got input from the AASHTO committees and revised it and took it to the AASHTO spring meeting in the end of April, and that's where it was approved the way it was. But so as part of implementing the safety action plan, and as part of the current Craig Thompson's presidential emphasis areas of safety, we solicited case studies from the states. This went out through our transportation policy forum, and we just had a kind of a brief form. We wanted states to just send in examples of what they've been doing, what they would like to share, so that we could just get that kind of those examples disseminated more. We do have a website at the end I'll put up. We do have these materials on a website where you can go look at the state case studies. But there was a really wide range in the case studies that we got. So we have 45, I guess this is on the slides. We have 45 case studies, and I forget how many states. There were some states submitted more than one, but they're kind of about individual countermeasures, or systemic application of countermeasures, or a new, more innovative countermeasure that have been tried. Some of the program-wide things, looking at this statewide analysis methods, human factors. Some district safety, kind of how working on safety in the districts, and some cross-discipline work groups, also work group type thing. So there was employee safety, activities and equipment procurement program. So it's a really wide range of examples. And so there's a lot of good stuff in there to check on and follow up on with the states if you are interested in. And we're still, I mean, we can always take more. We are developing more ourselves through the Safety Technical Service Program, but we can take more if a state's got like to give us a paragraph and a link to something, we'd be happy to post that, get that shared more. We're kind of trying to build up the website a little more so there's get to the case studies and sort through them more, but for right now, we just have one file that has them all in there. Then the other thing we had done with after the safety summit with the safety action plan was the committees were all asked to look at their work plans for the year and commit to do something on safety. Or maybe something in addition if they already were doing something. So we got input from all of the committees and AASHTO councils on that, and there are over 60 different activities. So some of the committees had several things that they were committing to do for the year, and I would say all the committees seems like all the committees had more than one. And so there was there's a lot of really good stuff in there, and I'm actually, I think, kind of getting notes from all the committees on the end about what they did or how it went would be a really neat way to look back and see, what all could be done in a year. But a lot of it kind of, one of AASHTO's primary things is sharing experiences among the states and sharing practices. So a lot of the committees were planning webinars or a safety element of their in-person meetings, finding best practices on things, and I think less similar things like that, but as individual committees and then working jointly too. So there were a lot of ideas for doing things across committees. And so then there were also different types of topics and activities that were listed in the safety plan as examples, but things like sharing the noteworthy practices, but looking for things that would really kind of support what states are doing, try to help move things to the next level or provide additional ideas for states to consider. So that's all I have on the safety initiative. We do have on our transportation policy forum website, we do have a place where we are posting you can find a list of the committee commitments there and the list of the case studies. The safety action plan is there and the resolution from last fall also. We do have the AASHTO Safety Summit coming up in the fall. The dates and location are set for that. So that note up here on the screen. So that's October 15th to 17th if it's too small for you, and it's in Houston. We will have the registration site up in the next month or so. So we will, there'll be more information that we'll get out to people on that. So if there's any questions, I can try to answer those now. And I did put my contact information on the first slide with my email address and phone number if anybody has questions later that come up. Karen?
So I looked at this AASHTO Safety Initiative, this website recently because I had to, not because everyone's way too busy. But just putting a plug in here, I'm on the planning committee for the St. Louis conference. I'm doing the safety workshop, and I promise anything that I ever plan and execute is interactive. So everybody come to the safety workshop. You'll walk away with practical things. I was totally blown away by the amount that, if you remember that one slide that had all those little colored boxes and then the resources, there is a ton of information out there. I wish I had looked at it earlier. I know I'm not the safety person. John is that. So I know that they've looked at it, they've seen it, but there is a ton of information out there that is just yours for the taking. So I just applaud AASHTO for taking this initiative on. I know that the conference last year in Kansas City had I think over 40 DOT directors there. I looked at the agenda and I was just like, oh my goodness, there's so many heavy hitters here, because safety is the number one goal. It's the number one priority for any transportation organization. And it's something that you can get stakeholders involved in behind. So, and unfortunately it's going in the wrong direction because, well, we all know why. So I encourage you, open this website up, come to St. Louis, go to Houston. Lots of things happening with safety. So I'm going to open it up. Is there anyone that has any questions they want to ask of her before we go to our next feature presentation?
While you're waiting to see if anyone has questions there, I will mention that with the a lot of the committees are having safety focused sessions or a theme for the meeting at their meeting this year, and so we're really looking forward to the summit to hear from the committees on how what all how that went, what all they got out of it. And with the summit this year, it'll be 2.5 days, but the first day we're actually organizing those sessions to kind of co-host the individual sessions with a committee partner. And we did check with Anna about co-hosting a session on. We'll have to work out the details of the topic, and we'll get input from this committee and also the safety committee on how to structure that, but really kind of focusing on having a lot of discussion. But I think that'll be a good place to get a lot more input on the safety and performance management type topic, and looking forward to that.
Great. Kelly, what question do you have?
Hi, Kelly. It's Kelly. One of the things that I have really kind of thought about and starting to have conversations around, and it's maybe a food for thought and we can discuss further later, is, we have our lag measures, our outcomes, unfortunately, our fatalities and serious injuries. Is there a place either already existing or a conversation that might be helpful about lead measures, about which safety investments, as you're measuring those, might actually help us move the needle a little better than where a lot of states are going? Or
yeah, and it's kind of offhand one specific resource I don't know about, but we do. The safety committee is very interested in having those conversations and just even talking about, kind of what other measures are people using other than just the, fatality and injury numbers. And I mean, John can tell you about those conversations too. It's just trying to figure out some like what to look at to actually better manage the performance of the program. And so I think that's exactly where the kind of looking at helping you plan the program, I think, is where it was kind of hoping we could try to focus at least some of the time at the summit in that session on. It's just that topic exactly, I guess, trying to get ahead of things. So looking at,
I think that would be great. I'd be really interested in roadway ones specific. I mean, obviously anything, but roadway ones would be of particular interest at the moment. So thanks.
Great, thanks.
So Christos has a comment, question. Safety is also impacted by people's behavior. Are there any behavioral type measures that can be utilized to move the needle? Is that being captured in your best practices and resources, Kelly?
So in the yes, we did get some from the case studies that the state submitted also were behavioral. So there's some good examples in there. And yeah, that's part of what we work with the Governor's Highway Safety Association a lot, and do plan to actually also get their help on a session with the at the summit also on basically communications and road user targeting specific groups of road users, I guess, to try to get a lot more of the kind of the discussion going on. The behavioral countermeasures, but also kind of what the needs are. Where do we kind of what examples are out there that have been used, but then what other new types of programs or things do we need to try to work towards?
Great. So any other questions, comments, insights? I know if I ask for a show of hands, all would raise their hand that safety is one of the primary initiatives that any transportation is working on. So this is kind of the universal language. Great. Well, thank you so much, Kelly. Oh,
Thank you.
somebody just raised their hand. Who was that? And then they took it down. Don't be shy. You can unmute, and they probably didn't mean to do that. We look forward
Right.
to the continued efforts and being able to capture all the good stuff that transportation agencies all over the world are doing. So thank you.
Great, thanks.
Okay, so now I get to be biased again and use my word favorite, but I just have to say one of my favorites. I've worked with John for probably 2 decades, John Nelson from Missouri DOT, who's going to be presenting on actually implementing safety. How do you, it's a very practical, it's kind of like where you're going, Kelly. It's not always the actual tick and tie of the measure and the I'm losing my train of thought. With the leading indicators like you're looking for. But I think you'll find it very interesting. So John has been with Missouri DOT for how many decades? 35?
20 years.
He is the assistant to the state highway safety and traffic engineer for MoDOT. He champions the department's highway safety efforts, including the strategic highway safety plan, which of course is called Show Me Zero because we're from Missouri and we're from the Show Me state. So everyone needs to come to St. Louis in September. He collaborates with safety partners throughout the state to identify and implement both the infrastructure and behavioral solutions. So one thing that is different about our DOT than other DOTs that I've learned from going to these conferences is our highway safety office joined MoDOT, joined the DOT like 2 decades ago. So we have the engineering side and the behavioral side working side by side. We're all within the same organization on the same floor. We're all working together, and that is very, very helpful. We've been able to take advantage of that synergy there. He graduated from the University of Missouri. His passion, I can attest to the fact that he talks nonstop and works nonstop to reduce fatal and serious injury crashes on Missouri roadways. And I am going to stop talking so he can talk about safer. Thank you, John.
All right, thanks, Karen. And I just assume my screen is showing, so if not, stop me. But really appreciate the opportunity to be here, share a little bit about what we're doing in Missouri. I know several other states are doing some really great things as well. So it's always good to hear and learn from each other. So appreciate the invitation from the committees. And yeah, I'll just jump right in. So Show Me Zero is our strategic highway safety plan in Missouri. It is, as Karen said, all encompassing. We talk a lot about the 4 behaviors that you see there. But like other states, we're constantly asking ourselves, how do we get closer to zero, and what does that look like from both an infrastructure and a behavioral standpoint? I do like to always just give a little bit of background just for context of kind of where we're at in Missouri. So you can see for the last several years, we've been hovering around the 1,000 fatality mark. Actually, 2021 was the first time we had exceeded 1,000 fatalities since 2006. And so you can see ever since 2019, we had 3 years in a row of increases. Finally, last year, we had the first decrease since 2019, a 6% decrease. Year to date this year, we're down 9% compared to last year. So we got a couple things trending in the right direction. Of course, there's so many factors that go into play in all this that it's always hard to pinpoint something, but we're hoping that we're trending towards getting back to pre-pandemic levels and then just continuing to get that decline, hopefully back to where we were in 2013, 2014, which was our lowest numbers in like 60 years, and then hopefully again continuing towards zeros. This won't surprise anybody. I mean, we see the same risky behaviors playing out all the time in our crash data. We talk about the big four a lot: seatbelts, speed, distraction, and impairment. You can see the distracted number there is 106 fatalities last year in Missouri. That's a minimum. It's really difficult for officers to detect that. I would guess it's more likely that it's probably twice that many, which would really put distraction right there alongside impairment, speed, and some of the other actions we're seeing out there. But these are the four things we talk about all the time, both again from a behavioral standpoint as well as an infrastructure standpoint. Is how do we get people to buckle up, put the phone down, slow down, and drive sober? And if we can't get them to do that, what can we do to help mitigate that? So that's kind of what I want to talk to today. And it's been really interesting. So Karen mentioned I've been with the DOT for about 20 years. The vast majority of that, probably the last 16 to 17 years of that, has been closely involved in traffic safety. And I'm an engineer by trade. That's what my degree is. So my actual introduction to highway safety was on the infrastructure side, looking at things like rumble strips, guard cable, roundabouts, signing, different things like that. But it's been interesting over the past 2 decades really to watch the evolution of safety get to where it is today and where I think it's going in the future. You can talk to engineers that maybe have been around longer than I have, maybe 30 years, or you can talk to people that retired, that were doing this 40 years ago, 50 years ago. And where safety used to kind of be, it was just very nominal, right? So if a project met the standards, and by standards, typically that meant the AASHTO roadside design guide, the green book, then it was considered safe, right? So all the standards were there, the proper lane widths, the proper tangent sections and super elevation, whatever it was. And it was kind of like this very black and white. If you had those things, you were safe. If you didn't have them, all of a sudden you were completely unsafe. So there was no continuum of safety. And what's kind of evolved over time is, the process has become more sophisticated, more scientific. Agencies started using crash data, obviously, to do some hotspot analysis, find out where those clusters were. About 20 years ago, about when I started my career, is when strategic highway safety plans first came onto the scene and really emphasized this comprehensive approach to safety. Talking specifically about the 4 E's of education, enforcement, engineering, and emergency services. And it was this idea that all these things kind of converge on the highway, right? Safer roads, safe users, safe behaviors, and things that maybe sounds familiar with where we're at today. And that just continued to evolve with things like systemic safety. So Missouri was a pretty early adopter of systemic safety. And what I mean by that is, instead of just saying, hey, there's people that have crossed the road here and had a head-on collision, let's go put guard cable in that spot. What systemic safety really did was say, let's look at the systems, the types of corridors, the types of facilities that are most prevalent to these crash types, and let's blanket those systems or those corridors with a treatment. So with guard cable, for example, instead of just treating the hot spots where random crossover crashes had occurred, Missouri installed it all down I-70, all down I-44 in our state, and many other states have done the same. And then this evolution really kind of came to kind of a next level in 2010 timeframe, somewhere around there, with the development of the Highway Safety Manual, and really this quantitative look of predicting safety performance as the result of projects and different countermeasures. So I say all that to say that now today there's all this conversation about safe system. I mean, you hear it pretty much in any kind of safety summit you go to. You heard it at the AASHTO, and you hear it at our state safety conference. I was in Ohio last week. You hear about it there. And it's a great thing. But I really encourage people just to consider it not as a new thing, but really as just the continued evolution of refining the safety process. And a lot of the things that are at play in the safe system approach really aren't totally new themselves. It's just making sure all those things fit together. So there's these 6 guiding principles that are talked about often, starting with the death on our highways is unacceptable. We want that number to be 0. That's the only acceptable number. That's what's acceptable for me, for my family, for my school, my community, and ultimately our state. Also, you know, we talked about buckle up, phone down, slow down, drive sober. We know humans are going to make mistakes. We like to change that a little bit and say humans make choices, because they're not just mistakes. A lot of times they are conscious decisions being made. When they make these mistakes or these choices, we know they are vulnerable. And then, of course, responsibility is shared between those of us who design and operate and maintain the system, as well as those who use it. And then building in redundancy, I really think, is the core principle of safe system. And then, of course, being proactive. So you're probably familiar with this, and maybe I'm preaching to the choir here a little bit, but the idea is to have this redundancy through these different layers of protection in the system. So the thought is that for someone to lose their life on a highway, multiple things have to fail for that to happen. Now, I would say we're not quite there yet as a society, definitely not as a state in Missouri, but that's really what we're building for. And so when we talk about education and public policy and enforcement and engineering and emergency services, those are all layers of defense in this safe system approach that are trying to keep the roadway safe for everyone. And so, again, going back to all those behaviors we see in the crashes, I think we're all coming to the realization, I mean, maybe we've been there for years, that it's really difficult to completely eliminate these behaviors. So how can we work together comprehensively through a safe system approach to both reduce these behaviors, but then also to minimize or mitigate the consequences when they inevitably occur? So I'll share this little illustration in an embarrassing picture of me from, I don't know, when I was 8 or 9 years old. But this is how I kind of like to think about safe systems. So when I was younger, I grew up about 2 hours south of St. Louis on I-55. And a regular treat for us was getting to go north and watch the Cardinals play ball. Of course, back then in the 80s, you know, they played in the old Busch Stadium with the arches around the top, and also this field with AstroTurf, where the ball would bounce crazy high and it'd be hot. But when we would go to the game, we always had 2 rules when we were there. One was we always took our glove because we were so hopeful to catch a foul ball, which I never did. But the other was that our dad always kind of taught us, hey, you got to watch every pitch. And we watched every pitch, one, just to keep up with the game, but also just to stay safe. So occasionally we would be lucky enough, you know, to sit down kind of in these seats back here behind the dugout. And if you ever went to the game at a stadium back in those days, the only netting in the stadium would be directly behind home plate. So just this little narrow area here, you can kind of see the fencing down there. But if you were over here, you really just kind of had to have your head on a swivel, because you never knew when a line drive was going to come your way. Well, more recently, if you've gone to a game in the last few years, especially if you've gone to one in St. Louis at Busch Stadium, you'll now notice that even if you're further down the baseline, even in the outfield, depending on the height of your seat, there is now netting that extends further down, and you can kind of see it in these shaded areas here. So what the Cardinals have done, and what a lot of Major League Baseball teams have done, is they have extended that netting for the sole purpose of safety. And the reality was, despite all the rules from dads and caretakers, hey, to pay attention, watch for things, and even the warnings in the stadium, people were still being struck by high velocity line drives in foul territory. And so what the Cardinals did and other teams did is they extended this netting through that system to help protect this, because people kept making those same choices, those same mistakes, not to pay attention. But I also like to say, you know, notice what the Cardinals and other teams did not do. You know, they did not put netting around the entire stadium. They did not tell people to not come to the games, to stay home and watch them on TV. They did not quit playing the game altogether. No, they took this strategic approach to identify, okay, where is the propensity for mistakes and vulnerabilities, and how can we best mitigate that? So, you know, they could have put that net around the entire stadium, but the reality is a home run, for example, is not traveling at the same velocity or the same trajectory that puts people at risk along the sidelines. So when we talk about safe system at the DOT, that's really how I try to encourage our districts and our project teams to think about it. Nobody is suggesting that we can build everything to the maximum standard and put all the bells and whistles on every roadway. We just know that's not possible. But what we can do is identify the systems and the scenarios and the corridors that are at greatest risk based on the conditions of the system and those who use the system, and try to take measures to do that. So what we've done, it's really not that earth-shattering, but we've created this tool called SAFER, and SAFER is an acronym for Karen's quiz. It stands for Safety Assessment for Every Roadway. And all it is really is a list of questions for our project teams to go through every single time they do a project, to look for the opportunities, to look for the systems, the scenarios, the strategic items they can implement in their project to improve safety a little bit at a time with each project. It's for every project that we do. It's not just for the safety projects. So every overlay, resurfacing, bridge replacement, rehab, whatever it is, they're being asked to go through this document. It's based on federal highways proven safety countermeasures, so it's very infrastructure driven. That's sort of the core elements, but we just have a number of questions. It's not really a checklist that we require them to answer yes or no on everyone and justify why they did or didn't implement that, but it is asking them, forcing them to have that conversation every time. Hey, is there an opportunity to do leading pedestrian intervals here? Is there an opportunity to put in a J turn on this corridor, to put reflective backplates on it? So all we're asking is the project teams to take this document and just to walk through every category as they go along. So these are the categories that are currently in there. Vulnerable road users is one we put at the very front. For intentional purposes, really to make sure that conversation is happening more and more. So we want that to kind of be the first thing out of the gate when they go through that. But as they walk through these categories, there will just be simple questions for them to consider, and it may give them a link for more information about a particular countermeasure, or good situations to use it, or potential results. And they're just, again, asked to walk through that, have conversations, and then see where they can fit that into their project. And ideally, they're going to do this in the scoping phase when they're still developing the estimate and the timeline for the project. That way it can be budgeted accordingly, and those things can get implemented. So why did we do this? I mean, obviously at the core, we're wanting to improve safety, but I think like a lot of other states, Missouri had been in a pretty constant mindset of just asset management for a number of years, especially when our statewide transportation improvement program was much leaner, didn't have as many funds in it. There was a few years there in Missouri where we were just hoping to have enough money in the STIP to take care of the system that we had. So for many years, we were so ingrained on this kind of asset management mindset and these streamlined processes through things like practical design. Very good things, right? Asset management's a great thing to do. Practical design's a great thing to do. But if we're not careful, it can become the norm. And it's almost like some of these safety questions that we're now asking through SAFER weren't necessarily being ignored intentionally, but they just weren't part of the streamlined process. So we wanted to reintroduce that into the scoping phase, and really just to kind of build out the scoping phase from where it had evolved to. The other was workforce development. Again, every state's dealing with this, but just constant turnover and staffing changes keeps it really hard to keep that institutional knowledge related to safety. And so sometimes people just don't know what questions to ask, or, you may have a new project designer who's working on a project and they just don't know. It's nothing, again, intentional that they're doing. Sometimes they just don't know what they don't know when it comes to potential safety countermeasures. And then, of course, accountability. We get about $80 million in highway safety improvement program funds every year in Missouri, making sure that we're getting the best return on that investment. So to go along with SAFER, we have developed a lot of tools for our districts to use. We're very decentralized in Missouri. The districts program their projects, they design them, they determine where to use that safety money. but helping them quantify that through some estimator tools that are largely based on the highway safety manual, crash modification factors, really allowing them to quantify the benefits and to calculate things like a benefit cost ratio. And then what we ask them to do is when they enter that project into our STIP management system, in our project database, we're asking them to quantify, hey, on this $2 million project, how much of this is safety? What are those safety improvements and what benefits are you expecting? Just briefly, I'll share with you some of the early returns. This does continue to be a work in progress, but the first year after we kind of fully implemented SAFER, what we saw was that 28% of our STIP projects included some amount of quantifiable safety improvements that totaled about $489 million with an overall benefit cost of 4.1 to 1. This past STIP was our second year to do that. And we've increased now, instead of just 28% of our projects including measurable safety improvements, now about half of them do, 50%. And we've seen a 33% increase in the amount of funding that's been dedicated to those measurable safety improvements. And the best news is that even increasing that and adding more safety, we really haven't seen any drop off in our benefit cost. In fact, it was slightly higher this year. The other thing I will point out is that we have also been to categorize how much of our safety investment is needed just to maintain the safety system that's already out there. So we kind of consider this safety asset management. You can see 113 of that 648 really was for maintaining existing systems. So that's really what the SAFER document is. It's just a project or a tool for our project teams to walk through. You can access it there in our QR code. You can also go out to MoDOT's engineering policy guide. One last slide I'll share, and then I promise I'll stop and see if there's any questions. We do have a behavioral SAFER document as well. It is very much more driven towards legislative initiatives needed in our state. The acronym in this case stands for Safer Access for Everyone on the Roadways. And they're really talking about public policy measures that we need in Missouri to help be another layer of defense in the safe system approach. So things like stronger booster seat laws, primary seat belt. We did get a hands-free law passed in Missouri last year, trying to get our helmet law back for motorcyclists. But they're nice complements to each other, where what we're doing on the engineering side is also supported by the behavioral side. And collectively, those things hopefully are going to create a safer system in Missouri. So with that, I'll stop. Here's my contact info if anyone would like to reach out later for more discussion, but I'm happy to answer any questions today as well.
So feel free to put them in chat or raise your hand. We do have one question from chat already. Is your project safety improvement investment tool available?
Yes, it's available. And actually, I'll put the link in the chat. Actually, it looks like Lori already did. So yeah, it's on the website in our engineering policy guide, and there's just a link. It's a PDF. So feel free to take it, borrow, steal from it, whatever you like.
Mike, are you referring to the SAFER? And I'm sorry, John, you've told me for the past 3 years not to call it a checklist, but I call it a checklist. It's a series of questions. Are you talking about the series of questions, or are you talking about the STIP estimator? I want to clarify, Mike, which tool were you referring to?
Sorry, I was referring to the worksheet, not the PDF, but the actual Excel
Sorry
file.
about that.
And the reason I ask is because we have a similar tool that we've created in California. It's also based on crash modification factors, and that is actually an integral part of our performance management. So, you know, we have performance goals for safety, but we actually build those into our asset management framework. So in other words, just like we have condition targets and goals for pavements and bridges and other things, we have reduction in fatal and serious injury goals, and we want to budget for them and resource them. And so it's really important to have that project level tool to say, this is what we expect this project to yield if we undertake it. And it also allows us to develop that relationship between investment and performance outcomes. And I think for asset management and for performance management, it's really critical. So I'm very interested to see how our tool compares to your tool, frankly.
Yeah, we would be happy to do that. Those tools currently aren't on the external web, but we can definitely share them with Caltrans or anyone else who's interested. I'll put my email in the chat box, and anybody who wants to just reach out, we'll put you in touch with our team. But yeah, we would love to share that, and actually we would love to see what other states are doing, because there are some countermeasures that are really difficult to quantify. Because they don't have a CMF or they don't have a model in the highway safety manual. And so for some of those types of things, we're having to kind of create our best guess. And so we've done some of that as well.
Yeah, and we're having to do the same thing, which is why I'm really interested to kind of compare notes here. For things like worker safety improvements that we're doing, there's no crash modification factors for that. The number of spot type of things, we don't have crash modification factors for. And then, you know, how we're looking at it with respect to traffic volumes and highway characteristics. So we're trying to move to more of a full machine learning model to estimate these safety benefits at the project level, and just, you know, having another sort of organic development would be of great interest to compare with.
Absolutely, we'd love that.
Mike is on our Committee on Performance-Based Management Leadership team, so I've worked with him for a couple of years, so it was kind of scary because I knew what he meant by that question. And it's like, if I can understand what Mike's saying, that is, I consider that a high compliment for me, because Mike is all-knowing and all powerful with what he's doing in California. So any other questions, comments, insights for John or Kelly? Okay, well, these links will be part of the webinar notes. There's lots of information in there, and then you've got John's contact information if you want to get more information on that specific STIP estimator tool, to see either how it compares or something that you may want to do and look at and start in your state, as well as that SAFER tool, which is the list of questions to ask. So thank you to both John and Kelly for our feature presentation. That is something near and dear to each of our hearts. Okay, we're going to turn the page now and start the subcommittee task force. Go ahead and turn it to the next slide, please. So we've got 4, 5, 6, we've got 7 subcommittees and work groups. I'm not going to introduce everybody. They're going to introduce themselves. But what I want you to do as listeners is, as each of these chairs and vice chairs give their updates, please write down staff in your agency who you think should attend or should investigate, hey, maybe I should be part of this subcommittee or part of this task force. Either to expand their knowledge, to be able to network, to be able to learn more information. This has probably been, for me personally, the most benefit of being part of the Committee on Performance-Based Management. You don't have to be a member of AASHTO. You don't have to be a voting. You can just say, I want to go to this webinar. Some of these webinars meet every week. Some of these meet every not every week. Some meet every month. Christos wishes they met every week. Some meet every month, some meet every other month. It's all based on what is happening in the context of what's happening on the national front. I have benefited from it tremendously, because something new comes out or something changes. I can, at the drop of a hat, pick up my phone or send an email to somebody I know who can give me the answer very quickly on something that just blew my mind. So I can't emphasize enough, this is the most benefit that you could get is by having you and your staff attending some of these subcommittees. And frankly, I've attended them all at one time or another. It gives you more information to know, like, wow, is that a good fit? Nope, that's not quite what I need to go in the direction of. And then you just keep trying one till you find one. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Ryan and Lori on policy and rulemaking.
Thanks, Karen. Appreciate the opportunity to talk. I'll echo what you said, Karen, about just sort of, participating in committees. I think as we attend just the respective groups that we all sort of manage, and it's really useful to hear what other DOTs are thinking, and sort of crowdsourcing all that experience together to think through issues that are coming our way. And so for the policy and rulemaking work group, one of the issues we've been working through the last few months has to do with reauthorization. I think most of you are familiar with the concept. Congress puts together a funding package about every 5 years that sort of funds what we do as DOTs. Sometimes each one of these has its own flavor. As time goes on, technology and innovation happens, new programs come about, new policy preferences make their way into these things. Sometimes they're great for us, sometimes they're not as great. But whenever these things come around, we have an opportunity to think through what it is we'd like to tell our elected officials as they're putting these packages together. And so that is what we've been working on as a group. If you want to go to the next slide, AASHTO has been right there along with us. They've done a great job of getting us ready. On the left there, you can see that they've thought through a number of topics that we want to cover with our elected officials, and the various committees that should be responsible for tackling what we're calling white papers. These are just sort of summaries of issues we find important, things that should be considered for the next go round. They've also provided us a sort of an outline of how we should be getting this done, when we should be getting these things done. And with talking to Anna, she's mentioned that some groups are ahead, some are behind. For us, we're in that Goldilocks zone. We're in good shape. We're on track, but it's taken some work to get there. And so, if you go to the next slide, we've had to just, if we step back to what the exercise is, it's identifying what it is about our committee that we want Congress to consider for the next go around. Now, there's a number of us here. We have a number of issues that we deal with every day regarding IJA or bill, things we'd like to see changed or modified or adjusted. We don't always agree on those things, so we have to sort of boil it down to sort of the most important things, sort of prioritizing things. And then once we identify those priorities, it's about developing those summaries, those white papers. And so what have we been doing now? You can go to the next slide. We started kind of this effort in earnest back at the start of April when we met for about 90 minutes to kind of begin sort of the detailed discussions about what it is we want to do. Through that, we really didn't come to any conclusions, so we decided to do a survey. That survey closed at the end of May, and there were several themes that came about from that thing. So if you go to the next slide, the summarized themes from the survey was that the topics we covered back in 2019 prior to the IJA and the bill, those things are still relevant, and they had to do with things like don't tie funding to performance. There's a whole bunch of things there's like 4 things we thought were really important at that time, and those things our members thought were still important. They also were some sentiments about the federal TPM framework not being super effective for us. We're not really using it for decision making. I would argue that it may not be for us. It's probably more for Congress and elected officials, but that's neither here nor there. Folks also thought that really wanted to make sure Congress understood that states understand how to manage the highway system and our transportation networks the best. And so we should be left to decide these things on our own. They also felt that we should be focusing on sort of system performance, things like our assets, rather than things that are a little bit more policy based, a little bit more politically motivated. And so, getting back to sort of measures and or programs and policies and rules that sort of apply across the board uniformly to our industry. So one other thing that was mentioned was collaboration. We've seen a lot of we're trying to recapture some of the collaboration we that took place when these things first came about in MAP 21. We feel that the more we can talk about things as a group, the more we can mistake proof it as it makes its way into actual rulemakings and policy. And so, I think the greenhouse gas, lawsuits and appeals are kind of fresh on everyone's mind when they took this survey. So, how can we work more closely together with our partners, our regulators, our elected officials to iron these things out well in advance of when actual policy is created. So, and then lastly, very clear in throughout the survey was that we don't want any new measures. So with that, we can move on to just sort of how we took that feedback. Christos asked me to develop a top 10 to sort of work with, and I presented that on the 14th at our monthly meeting. We asked folks to sort of take that top 10 and boil it down to a top 5. And we got that feedback here at the end of May. And so right now, with that top 5 list, we have begun to ask for champions. And I want to thank many of you who have already responded to Anna's request for help on the white papers. It's been very encouraging to see all of you step up to say, I can help assist with this or that. The good news, and if you want to go to the last slide, I believe, the good news is that work on these white papers is not meant to be sort of labor intensive. It's a bulleted list. This is what you see on the right is an excerpt from our 2019 white paper. It's just an issue, and then it's several things for elected officials to consider. And so we're looking for our champions on these things. We'll be assigning those here this week to kind of mimic that approach and really not get too exhaustive on what it is they're putting together, because it will go through an iterative process. If I just bring you back to that schedule that I showed you early on, June 28th is when these things are due. So that's the end of this month. But that's not the end of it. The true sort of ending is when we get to the annual, I think it's the Transportation Policy Forum meeting this fall. Probably myself and Jean will probably attend that meeting in Philadelphia to represent the issues that our committee landed on and the different aspects we want to reiterate for our elected officials. And so that's where we are with policy and rulemaking. For reference, we meet the second Tuesday of every month at 1 p.m. Eastern. And if you're not part of our group, you get to be, I encourage you to get a hold of Anna and get added to our list. We talk about a lot of different issues and really think through how these policies will end up affecting our DOTs. So I'll stop there and see if there are any questions.
Okay, I'm not going to introduce each one, so I'm just going to tell you, you guys go from one to the next to the next. And if you have questions, because we have so many to take care of, enter them in the chat because we are going to stop in between.
Good afternoon. My name is Edgardo Block from the Connecticut DOT Performance Management. Together with Alma Mujkanovich, we lead the research work group within the Committee on Performance-Based Management. And so my report is short. We were successful with our research needs statement submitted for the NCHRP program. We submitted 3. They were all selected. And what's left now between now and the end of the month is for us to nominate panel members that are going to represent our perspective in those projects. And that is due by June 30th, 2024. NCHRP has issued the FY 2025 announcement. If you can move to the next slide. These are the three projects. They had RNS numbers and now they have project numbers. There are 2342. So the first one is a scoping study to identify curriculum development needs for workforce development and transportation asset management. 2348 is understanding, creating, and measuring public value, lessons learned from public agencies. And 2574 is advancing methods to evaluate greenhouse gas emissions during transportation decision-making and performance management. So these three are moving forward, and the panel's nominations are being accepted by NCHRP through June 30th. So if you have staff or yourself, if you're on the committee and you would like to participate, this is the time to do that. For feeding the pipeline moving forward, so what we're doing in 2024, we started at the annual meeting eliciting research needs. And then what we do at the CPBM is hold 2 research symposiums. They are very interactive, action-driven working sessions. Our first one was on April 11th to elicit more ideas and discuss the needs. And then we take those and narrow them down with an intermediate survey to sort of start ranking to see which top ones we want to move forward with. On May 23rd, we selected the top research need statements by the subcommittee and captured key elements for a draft and identified volunteers to take these through the end line. So the clock keeps moving over the summer. With the next slide, we need to meet to draft these. And then in September, the committee will rank these and we have, I think, 5 subcommittees. So somewhere between 2, 3, 4, or 5 of these will be submitted by November 1st. And then we have to find sponsor committees or partner committees that are interested where the subjects overlap, other AASHTO committees, etc. In the process, what we want to do is share back with our partner agencies. There's a lot of TRB committees that we communicate with and we get ideas from. So we're giving our feedback back on what our research needs are for their use. And we, of course, appreciate their contributions. So the big task now, and we will be kicking that off shortly, well, with the help of the subcommittee chairs for each area to draft these RNSs. We don't have to do it perfectly. It's not that complicated versus the very old template that, or the older template that NCHRP had previously. And we have some expertise in drafting them so that we can have them ready for the end of October. And I don't know if there's another slide, but I think that is all I have for you today. We meet on the second Friday of every month, although I just realized that it conflicts with our agency picnic. So you may find the rescheduled notice for either the morning or another Friday. So it's usually, though, the second Friday of every month at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you very much. I don't know if there are any questions or if anybody, I don't see anything in the chat, but I may be looking at
No questions in the chat.
Great, thank you.
So who's giving the
David?
update?
I believe David is.
Well, hi, this is, I
Hi.
believe, David. I actually don't know the slides that may have been submitted. So if you,
This is the slide.
wow, okay. So as you can see, Gary Van Such out of Colorado is the chair for the committee. Jahan from West Virginia and myself from Iowa serve as vice chairs. We focus a lot on, areas aimed at what we can do to better organize and perform as organizations. We've been working recently to try to find ways of increasing our membership. I think, I don't know if your organizations face this, but very often when budgets are tight, things like training go by the wayside. I think as a lot of organizations find themselves in workforce crunch issues, the notion of having staff that can, I think it's often viewed as a luxury, working on organizational management and performance issues. They very often get pulled off on pressing issues or the fires we face day in and day out. I will share that one of the current efforts of the subcommittee is we've supported the conducting of an issues survey that went out. My many thanks to Anna and her help in getting that out and about. A couple days ago, data from that was downloaded and sent to Anna and to Gary. I'm hoping soon that we'll be able to say we're not going to make any more appeals for input. I want to say 40 to 45 folks attended. I know that at least 25 different state DOTs were included in the responses. So I'm looking forward to digging into the data and helping share some of the things that folks are sharing are important when it comes to issues they face and ways they think are areas of focus they believe need attention. One of the advantages of working in this particular area is that very often what we work on has the ability to leverage benefits in multiple areas. At least that's my experience. Actually, it's a lot like most of our subcommittees, right? Whether it's rules or research or whatever it is, most of what we do has a benefit in multiple areas. So I'm hoping that the survey yields something that's of interest and value. I unfortunately do not have a timeline on when a report is expected. Last I heard, there was an expectation that a summary of the results would be presented at the meeting in September in St. Louis. But I've not actually been made aware that that's a hard deadline. If someone else would know that or would like to pass it on to Gary or Jean and myself, that would be great. That we would make sure all the ducks are in a row and the product is ready to go. Other than that, I actually don't have any other updates that I can provide at the time, unless there are any questions. And if there are, I would probably have to refer them to Gary.
No questions in the chat.
Woohoo! I survived. Thank you for your time. Appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Deanna Keltner with the Minnesota, Deanna Belden. Oh my goodness. My old name came out, which is a fine name. Deanna Belden with the Minnesota DOT. Kelly Travelby, my co-chair from Michigan DOT, is here with us as well, but I'll be giving the update today. Oh, this is not in the right order I wanted. Oh, there we go. Okay. I'm starting with research for fear of just becoming a research task force. It always seems to be time to be working on research, but we were really happy with the success. I mean, the committee overall had this year submitting 3 and getting them funded. 2 here listed for this year's funding were developed by members of our task force. So we're really pleased with that success rate as well. And I want to encourage folks to submit your name to be on panels if either of these topics interest you. For this next fiscal year, so in 2020, starting now, we are, now I'm losing track, sorry, of what is fiscal year because it's still 2024. So it's for fiscal 26 funding, but we're going to be developing them starting now in fiscal 25. So we are looking at one that we developed last year on implementing resilience measures. And so the task there will be to look at the problem statement from last year and determine if it's ready to go as an implementation project or if it needs some redevelopment. We are also going to be looking at equity and programming and also measuring non-auto travel demand. And I have a handful of names of folks who are willing and able to help develop these research need statements. But if you are interested, please do let me know because we can always use more hands on deck. Next slide, please. So our task force was thinking about looking at 3 areas, ACE, accessibility, climate, and equity, essentially. But given our membership and time, we decided to focus now just on equity and affordability, with the other 2 in the wings for if we have additional membership at some time or decide we're ready to expand. But so for now, we are, for the next year or so, going to be looking at equity and affordability. Next slide. And we got back to trying to scope out what we would do. So we were using these questions as a guide. The answers to these questions aren't important for this meeting, but it was just to let you know what we were discussing, looking at these questions to think about how we could get our arms around what our task force can and should do in the equity measures space that's not being, to not be duplicative, but to add value. So we had a really good meeting yesterday and have a lot of tasks on our list to follow up with for July and August. We're hoping to have a couple of guest speakers at the July meeting to hear from them about things they know about happening in the equity space. And then in August, we want to have some nice debriefs from folks who are attending the TRB Equity Conference in mid-July. So hear about that in August, called the CATE Conference, CATE. Next slide. Okay, so our regular meetings are the first Wednesday of the month from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern time, and you can get the link on the TPM portal, but also if you're interested, I'd encourage you to get on our mailing list, because then you will, it'll be just easier to communicate, and we welcome you. That's what I have for today. Thanks.
Hello, everyone. This is Monica Alamon-Smoot from the Subcommittee on Risk Management. And I just wanted to kind of give a brief update. One of the things that Patrick and I have been working on has been to improve our website. And so we've met with Connor and we've been working on some website modifications. One of the things we're trying to do is update the website, make it a bit more current and user-friendly for folks. We're trying to our next steps is looking at kind of the featured highlights portion on the website and trying to figure out where we want to go with that information. And as everybody kind of mentioned, kind of that increase in membership, one of the things that we've worked on is a draft email that we have, and we're going to go ahead and email that out to other DOTs for anyone that they might recommend participate with the Subcommittee on Risk Management. So we have that in queue. Our next meeting is going to be on Monday, 1 to 2 Eastern time. The only other updates that I had was that we also, you see the AASHTO task force there. That panel has received an amplified research plan, and we are still requesting volunteers to assist. And then research projects from the symposium. I was able to attend, and I know William and I believe Patrick as well. And so we're working on kind of looking at that information as well. But that's all I have on risk management for today.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mike Johnson. I am with the California Department of Transportation, and I am the recently appointed new chair of the Subcommittee on Asset Management. So for the last month, I think there's a lot that's been going on with transitioning from Matt Hobbrick's leadership over to myself. And I had previously served as the vice chair with Matt for about the last year and a half. But there's still a lot that's going on from a transition standpoint. So if I'm a new face to you, that's the reason why. But that aside, we're getting our footing underneath us, and we're taking this opportunity along with AASHTO and Anna to to take a little bit of a strategic look at the subcommittee. Our subcommittee membership has been very loose in its structure historically. We do have and have been having monthly meetings for some time, but we're looking at the cadence of that, whether that makes sense. And really, how do we want to structure that time and the content? So I'm just, taking this opportunity to have sort of a fresh look at how we want to run this subcommittee. Having said that, we do have a work plan that we continue to work on. This was developed about a year and a half ago. The first item that is completed, and it's in with AASHTO Publications, is a synthesis of states' consistency reporting to the Federal Highway Administration. So talk a little bit about that. We're just initiating our work to develop a resource guide, what we call a resource guide. This is really a document that has sort of the best references for someone that may be starting out new in asset management. Where do I go? Where do I start? What are the best things to look at? So we're compiling that with our membership. And then we're looking at developing a TAMP review rubric, which would look at, how would we go about looking at the state's TAMPs to make, any kind of assessment of, how they're doing, how they're evolving and changing over time as everyone's now in their second asset management plan. So those are some of the bigger things. We have a few more items on our work plan, but that's kind of what the committee's been spending most of our time on of late. This is the item that we're just wrapping up. This is a summary of state practices for transportation asset management plan annual consistency reporting. So when Mshadoni was talking earlier, Karen asked the question, well, when do states have to do this? All of that is in this document, but the short answer was June 30th. But then what we've been getting from a lot of the member states is, the Federal Highway Administration gives a lot of latitude as to what the states report, what this looks like, the format. And so, we made a call for the states to submit their reports to this team that was working on this for the subcommittee. And we had about 14 people that went through these annual reports and broke them down into, to answer a number of questions that were established in a framework that we developed before, we started digging into them. And, ultimately where we ended up is we're looking at like 4 different areas of these things. So, what are the states doing with respect to reporting inventory and condition? And that includes targets and performance gaps. What are they doing in the area of risk, vulnerability, particularly climate resiliency, but other risks, financial risks? There's a requirement to report financial information that's actually in the regulations. But what exactly was being reported? We're reporting programming levels. Are we awarding contract awards? Are we awarding, actual expenditures or contract completions? So we were kind of looking at, what's being reported fiscally. And then all that fiscal information is generally reported along the 5 federal work types. So how is that, working out for everybody? And then finally, we looked at the narrative in these reports and, how does the narrative support the data that's being presented, or how does it help tell the story about how the states are making progress towards implementing asset management? One of the questions we got a lot were, how is the information being reported? How big are these documents? And I mean, we saw documents that were approved that were 1 page and hundreds of pages. And so, there's some statistics in this synthesis on the average size, which I want to say off the top of my head is like 11 pages. But anyway, if you're curious about what other states are doing in terms of this annual consistency reporting. This document is working its way through the AASHTO publications group now. And, hopefully we'll be able to get this out for everybody. And it does include a lot of graphics from, that the team felt were sort of the best case examples of how to report these different things, or different ways that these things are being reported as food for thought for folks that are putting together these annual consistency reports. Okay, so in terms of other things we're working on, we're super happy to be able to report that the National Asset Management Conference, the 15th National Asset Management Conference, is going to happen. And this was in some jeopardy after the Boston conference, which we had last year. We are changing sort of sponsorship on this, but we have firmed up August 24th through 27, 2025 in Chicago, Illinois, for the 15th National Conference on Transportation Asset Management. So we are working with Omar Smati and Iowa State. They are doing a lot of the administrative legwork for this conference, but the subcommittee will be playing a very heavy role in determining the conference content, the tracks, what kind of presentations we're going to be looking for within the national conference. So I know we've got the CPBM conference coming up in September in Missouri. Put this one on your longer term radar for August of 2025. Next slide. Yeah, as far as our meetings, like I said, our next one is June 17th. If you're not getting those meeting invites, by all means reach out to myself or to Anna with AASHTO. We're sending notifications to probably some 600 people or something for this. A huge list that we're notifying of that meeting. But if for some reason you're being missed and you want to attend those meetings, they're certainly open and available to anybody that's interested. And then just a reminder that we continue to do the TAM webinar series. There's just an incredible library of webinars now that are being really co-sponsored by AASHTO and Federal Highways. They're all available on the TAM's portal, or the TAM portal, sorry, to see the previous ones. And if you go into the events section of the TAM portal, you can see the upcoming planned ones. And then, really our primary distribution mechanism for everything asset management is going through the AASHTO TAM portal. If you don't have a bookmark for www.tam-portal.com, I encourage you to do it, because there's a lot of the research that Edgardo talked about. It's all published there. Webinars are published there. The TAMPs are published there. It's just an incredible resource for everything that is asset management. And with that, that's kind of a quick update of what's going on with the subcommittee on asset management.
So you just had an opportunity to listen to all the subcommittee work, the task force work, and I hope that you took it to heart of identifying staff in your transportation agency that can just sit in and listen to these things. And if you want any guidance for direction, I have been around for quite a few years, so I've got input that I can give you on any of these subcommittee meetings, the task force, and I would be happy to do so. So there are no open discussion items other than what I started the meeting with, because I said we're going to be talking about a lot of acronyms. So for those of you that have waited, you're still with us through the end. If you are coming to St. Louis and you want a drink, then email me the acronyms and what they mean. and you can wait until after you get the email from Lori that has the recording and has the webinar slides. I don't care if you cheat or not, but if you want to email me, Lori will put my email contact in the chat with those acronyms and what they mean for a free drink. Feel free to do so. So this is usually the only part of the meeting that I participate in. So I already put the first action item in. July 1st is the cutoff for the St. Louis conference. There's a detailed agenda. As Anna mentioned, the travel support, if your agency is eligible, if you're part of the TSP, that travel support information will go out tomorrow. If you're not part of the TSP, contact Anna. Just a reminder that the annual TAMP consistency determination is due June 28th. And then those PMF contacts, that whoever you want from your agency to enter PMF into UPACs are due to your Federal Highway Division office by June 27th. There's upcoming webinars. If you go to the next slide, Lori, the TPM and TAM offer a webinar every other month. So every month you can attend a webinar, and it's always easiest if you just go to that TPM portal or that TAM portal. You can get from one to the other they're all interconnected. There's lots of information out on that TPM and TAM portal. You heard some of the resources today. And if there are no other questions, comments, nothing in the chat, then I will give you 5 minutes back in your day. Thank you for staying with us till the end. And I hope I see each and every one of you. Be sure you invite others to come to St. Louis for an excellent conference. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Karen.
Thanks, Karen.